Hi, hello. So a little while back, I made a sequel to a video titled Avatar The Last Airbender's pro-colonialist message. In that video, I tore apart the promise for literally everything Beth Sattel says, mainly for its depiction of colonialism as an unequivocal good. I deconstructed just how damaging the solution would really be and how the arguments they use in the comic to defend the Fire Nation's settler colonies are the same arguments that have been used and are still used today to defend colonialism. I didn't say it then, but I heavily imply that the promise was racially prejudiced because racism is pretty much inherent to the justification of colonialism. This is all in stark contrast to the cartoon, which dedicates most of its runtime into showing just how damaging colonialism is and just how wrong and bad Sozin's ideology is. The video has been edited to try and avoid YouTube's trashy AI. The promise came out the same year as The Legend of Korra. This is a common marketing and sales tactic. When new content comes out, they put out some new content of the old. That's some word sludge, but what I'm getting at is that the comics were made with The Legend of Korra in mind, so its structure and politics are intertwined, especially the usage of fake complexity and moral grayness. Korra has 4 books that deserve to be looked at on their own separate terms, but the one issue that intertwines them is that Bright colonized their own show. The Americanization of The Legend of Korra has long been called out, so I shan't need to explain that. I mean, the United Republic of Nations literally has their own Statue of Liberty overlooking their own New York City. The parallels are obvious with this one. My issues aren't the injections of Western culture, but the way that the insertion of Western culture changes the messaging. The Fire Nation in the cartoon tends to be looked at as either Imperial Japan or China. Those are universally condemned by Americans. But due to American propaganda, a lot of Americans, probably including Bright and Jean Luen Yang, don't actually see the USA's imperialism as an issue. The United Republic itself was formed like America, the Union of Colonies, also the genocide of the indigenous population, but we'll ignore that. Just like the US, the UR is the beacon of progress, a multicultural hub, a democracy, so their imperialist actions are just spreading their goodness. This was the same justification of Fire Nation's war in the original series, except China bad. My hypothesis is that the Americanization of the franchise is what led to the switch from anti-imperialism to pro-imperialism, just classic American neoliberalism. That's the term for today. Without further ado,
Barney's about to meet his maker.
Die, you commie fucker!
Don't kill my daddy!
I'm gonna break my silence. I don't think that the equalists are communists. I think that they're much closer to fascists. Now, I know that the two definitions are contentious and sometimes just amount to people that I don't like. The imagery and messaging reminds me a lot of 1920s fascist movements like Italy under Mussolini and even the Nazis in World War II. I think that the easiest way to pin down fascism is through specific characteristics. The equalists are a cult, more specifically a cult of personality. Cult leaders like Amon prop themselves up as divinely appointed. His ability to take bending is no longer a unique form of blood bending, but something the universe itself granted him and only he can carry out this duty. His divine image is maintained through use of propaganda, especially with the control of mass media. He also promises that if you prostrate yourself for him, a utopia will be achieved. What helps people like Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, and Donald Trump rise to power is anger at the current system from the general populace. It's usually about the economy. In the Legend of Korra's case, it's about benders taking advantage of their powers in order to harm non-benders, as well as a seeming lack of government response to things like bending triads. In Ian Gershaw's book To Hell and Back Europe 1914 to 1949, he says this about fascist movements. They wanted more than just to overthrow or dismantle the existing state. They sought total commitment. They demanded soul as well as body. They looked to create a new man, a new society, a national utopia. Fascism saw a revolution of mentalities, values, and will. The equalist revolution intends to adjust the political system of the United Republic, mainly through stripping benders of their abilities. They would then move on to the rest of the world through imperialism. Cults often perpetuate that they and they alone hold the truth of the world, how society operates. They hold the means of salvation. A common fascist tactic is to pick a social group and say that they are responsible for all of your problems or just a deviance of society, and if you get rid of this group, then life will be better. I also don't think I really need to explain this one. Most people know what Hitler said about the Jews. He also targeted LGBT people, communists, black people, anyone who so much as slightly opposed him. Same goes for the equalists. The benders is the equivalent of the Jews. This of course banks on fear that if something radical isn't done right now, societal collapse is imminent. The equalist plan for government is pretty obviously authoritarian. Amon will have absolute rule over everything. Cults are inherently authoritarian. Even slight opposition to their ideology is met with heavy consequences. They make use of militarism to get rid of or intimidate their dissenters. In real life, we have the Knight of Long Knives, one of the most notable examples of a fascist movement quelling opposition. The equalists fully embrace violent militaristic tactics in order to exert their control. Another example of a fascist cult in a kids' cartoon that often gets referred to as communist is in My Little Pony, Starlight Glimmer's Town. Let me just list the characteristics it fits. 1. Cult of personality. 2. Scapegoating. 3. Ideological purity. 4. Authoritarianism. And 5. isolationism. There's also the Great Diamond Authority from Steven Universe, which don't commonly get called communist. There's just a few comments that were like, they're not really fascist, they're closer to communists, and it's like, technically they're not fascist, but communists? Get out of here. So communism advocates for a stateless, mindless, classless society where the means of production is community-owned and everything is distributed based solely on need. Amon doesn't advocate for any of that. Ever. The only one who brings up social class is the equalist with a megaphone, but as I've already explained, populism is a common weapon of fascists and other far-right lunatics, and is it really any different than the Jews controlling all the banks and hoarding all the money for themselves? If they were intended to be communists, I find it funny how liberals don't actually have any real criticism of communism, so they just made fascists maybe because National Socialist or something. The Red Scare was a very effective tactic. Like, I'm not even a commie myself, but even I believe that it deserves to be critiqued on its own terms, not the imaginary version a lot of Americans have in their heads. Now that that's out of the way, onto the non-binary expression. Here's a question for you. Does it exist? All of you may think that the answer is obvious, but no. Months before this video came out, I posted a draft of this session of the essay to Reddit and got two completely different responses. The first being, yes, of course it does, or no, it doesn't, and that's the point. United only in that they think that I'm fucking stupid. There are many issues with this, first being that the writing is so fucking awful the fandom can't even agree on the basic premise of whether the oppression is real or not. I agree more with the latter on non-better oppression not really existing. The series clearly supports the former in that non-better oppression is a real systemic issue. Now, the franchise clearly wants you to think that the benders have systematically and or systemically discriminated against non-benders since like the beginning of time itself, or just when they became distinct groups. And this has become so bad by the Legend of Korra that Amon was able to successfully start the Equalists, which by the finale of the show became a global emergency. My issue says it's left so vague as to what exactly led to this apparently long-held grudge by non-benders. While obviously Brack and the rest of the team had no stock put into non-bender oppression, it's strictly a Korra thing and we see basically none of it in that show already. Forget The Last Airbender. Fans try so hard to insert the alleged systemic oppression in for the writers. I had one person seriously claim that benders are responsible for all entertainment, all sports, all big jobs, and there's only one rich, non-bender Republic City who has generational wealth. This isn't even headcanon at this point, it's a fucking lie. The Ember Island players are important enough entertainers that the Fire Nation royal family used to or maybe still does see them on a yearly basis. I'm pretty sure that they're meant to be non-benders. Cowboy Ball, as seen in the beach episode, is a sport that does not use any bending. We can assume that it can be used for tournaments as well. Big jobs is so vague. Is being a sports announcer a big job? Is being a warden of the prison for the Fire Nation's worst criminal a big job? Is being an engineer whose inventions were coveted by the Fire Nation and important in the Day of the Back Sun a big job? Is being... Okay, I'll stop. You get the point. As for the last light, Hiroshi Sato is firmly established to be self-made, not a nepo baby. When you're in centuries or millennia-long conflict that leads to revolution, 3 questions for the revolutionaries are necessary to answer. 1. What specifically led the revolutionaries to resent the current system? 2. What was the tipping point that caused them to band together? 3. What exactly are they hoping to achieve with the revolution? All 3 of those are left completely unanswered. I might say that number 3 is an answer as the genocide of the benders, but no, the genocide of the benders is the method that they're using to achieve the goal, not the actual goal itself. If I could parse an actual reason myself, it would be favoritism of benders over non-benders, both socially and systematically. On a metatextual level, bending is the fun magic system that makes cool fight scenes. Naturally, we would want to focus on it. Think about your idea of a team avatar, a representative from each nation, right? And your idea of a representative would probably be a bender, correct? A non-bender on that team doesn't represent the culture in your mind. This is a classic example of prejudice. The idea that non-benders don't really reflect their nation's culture and are interchangeable has no basis in reality. In the chase, we see some more examples of prejudice.
We can take them 3 on 3.
Actually, Toph, there's 4 of us.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't count you. You know, no bending and all.
I can still fight!
Okay, 3 on 3 plus Sokka.
And point for Korra, the show does indeed show the systemic prejudice. The United Republic Council can have non-benders and benders, however, at present has only benders. Being able to make some water move has no effect on your ability to lead a country. You can just say that maybe they were the most qualified at this point in time, but diversity is important when it comes to biases. The Council, as a reaction to the Equalist terror activities, imposes a curfew on non-benders. Them not having non-bender representation makes them open to discriminatory policies. Be able to elect a government that represents a non-bender majority would help all this oppression. And at this point you might be asking, what's the problem? Well, first of all, this is a kid show. Being as vague as Korra is a massive problem. I was a kid when I watched this show and was very confused about the oppression. Second, implicit bias isn't really the angle that they're working from. Who's the one that brings up the city council as all benders? Korra. If you actually listen to what the Equals are saying, it's none of that. The Equals believe that benders are inherently dangerous, that they take advantage of their powers. If so, how does democracy fix that at all? What's he gonna do? My idea of implicit bias would lead to certain policies like affirmative action, diversity training, which would help with inequality. Oh, I forgot, they're neoliberals, they wouldn't do that shit. In terms of being able to use bending for nefarious reasons, benders aren't guns, they're people. You can't legislate people the same way. Think about the rough rhinos. Would it really be different if they used AR-50s instead of firebending? I understand the power imbalance angle, but unless they train, benders are as dangerous as a fly. Non-benders can indeed match to benders, so they put their mind to martial arts, but also it feels like this conflict came far too late in the timeline. We're already decades past an industrial revolution. Machinery would have caught up already with the bending, and indeed it has. Korra is an almost fully realized avatar, and Mako was a master firebender. They both go out like chumps against the chi blockers. We see this time and time again that benders have, by and large, lost their specialized shops to machinery. And this would lead to mass unemployment and poverty, and as we know, socioeconomic factors are heavily linked to crime. So disenfranchised benders would turn to bending triads in order to survive. Funnily enough, while scrolling the TLOk wiki, since they have links to a lot of sources, I discovered the Imbalance comic, which came out 6 years after Legend of Korra Book 1. I am not going to read this, as I made it very clear in the last video that I hate the comics. I think that they're shit. I almost never go into things with the intention that I'll hate them. However, Jinlo and Yang is not on the team, and Bryke is a hit or miss. So if there's someone out there that hates The Promise and The Search but likes Imbalance, comment and I may read it. But essentially, the factories replace benders with machines in order to save money, as in they can still work there just at a lower salary. This leads to a bender supremacist uprising, because according to Bryke, being a proletariat makes you the equivalent of a Nazi. Does the gang implement any policies that would help quell this new wave of poverty and address their valid concerns? Well, obviously not, given that this takes place before the Legend of Korra, where these problems are far worse. They instead start a police force in order to violently silence the oppressors. Well, at least the police have the same origins as the one in our world. Book 2 of the Legend of Korra gives us an even worse fate for the criminals.
For the triple threats. I am personal friends with the Avatar. I might be able to convince her to give Shady Shin his bending back.
Sounds good to me, boss.
Yeah, just permanently disable criminals. Let's just ignore all societal issues that let us here. Status quo is gone and I am the devil. These episodes are brought to you by privileged white neoliberals. So Amon's only fuck up was that he should have enacted vigilante justice on criminals. Speaking of Amon, what a shitty villain. His only motivation is that he wants to eradicate bending because of his daddy issues. He didn't give one shit about equality, which is just the most boring place that you can take this. I once got told he's the villain. It's fine that his ideology makes absolutely zero sense. Oh, so you hate moral complexity and nuance? Thanks, but I already knew that. Back to the show, the sloppy writing really shows its ass in that after Amon is defeated and exposed, the Equal S movement, which may I remind you was a world emergency, just suddenly evaporates. They may not be able to take away bending anymore, but they can just kill them, nothing stopping them. Simply put, Bright does not want to deal with the potential ramifications of a large group of armed and radicalized people, so they just throw them out. According to Avatar Legends, the role-playing game, which released in 2022, a large group of Equalists still exists, just that they're non-violent. If I speak. I don't really want to talk about Book 1 anymore. It's an absolute turd. Never liked it. A little potential rewrite would be that there's a communist uprising, because their version of the Communist Manifesto would be over 40 years old by this point. Like an actual communist uprising in relation to decolonization. The Far Nation diaspora would realistically continue to systematically discriminate against the other nations, making them second-class citizens. So it's a civil rights movement also. Of course, Barack would never do it because that would show a downside to colonialism, and post their promise that colonialism is an absolute force of good with no downsides, and the other nations are objectively inferior in culture and other ways of life. We love genocide here, okay? Anyways, on to Book 2.
Hail Satan!
The Legend of Korra Book 2 has long been lambasted as trash by the fan base, and for good reason. It is. So the plot of this season is civil war. Back in the ancient days, there was just one water tribe and the North Pole. However, due to disagreements, part of the tribe fled to the South Pole and started their own tribe. They would reunite occasionally for the New Moon Festival as seen in Avatar Kuruk's flashbacks. However, once the 100-Year War started, the Northern Water Tribe completely abandoned the ones in the South to get absolutely wrecked by the Far Nation. As a result, the Southern tribe's unique waterbending techniques were destroyed, as well as other parts of their culture, most importantly their spirituality. This causes some of the spirits to go dark. After the end of the war, the Northern Water Tribe helps them to rebuild in order to snatch up their resources, mainly oil. Neocolonialism is the word you should keep in mind. The Southern Water Tribe was never actually independent from the North. They were always a self-governed part of the North, probably due to sheer distance, let's be real here. The South has long wanted to be independent, kicking off Book 2. I know what you're thinking, how am I going to rip apart this plotline? Simple answer, I won't. Unlike Book 1, this is a perfectly sensible plot for a book. It honestly reminds me a lot of the episode from the original The Spirit World. The corruption of Heibai has kind of an allegorical role, commenting on deforestation and war. And here, the dark spirit problem has gotten so much worse because the Southern Walk tribe has lost its unique culture and identity. The modern architecture looks like Republic cities, and they even use the same currency, the yuan. For the first time ever, Bright could address the United Republic's imperialism problem. The real issue is that this political plot is completely abandoned in favor of a generic good versus evil plot. And they even waste 2 episodes on giving us the origin of the Avatar. It's Legend of Korra, guys. We don't do complexity and nuance here. You know, book 2 released when I was 7, but I don't think I watched it in full until I was 8. And I just remember the feeling of utter confusion when watching book 2, as I had no idea what the hell the Civil War plotline was about, or even what the finale was about. It was in making this video that I actually understood what actually happened, and it just makes me angry thinking about it, like we could finally return the franchise to its anti-imperialist roots. As for TLOk, instead of a totalitarianism, dark Avatar Satan bullshit, I would instead make him a misguided antagonist. TLOk is really the only one who wants to bring back the water tribes to their spiritual roots. He even revives the long-dead spirit bending technique. However, he also wants to keep the Southern Water Tribe from having their independence and fuse them together with the North. As we discussed above, this has made the dark spirit issue worse. This season would be solely about cultural imperialism, decolonization, industrialism, and having the 2 tribes regain their lost spirituality. Because, oh yeah, Korra leaves the spirit portals open despite having 2 episodes dedicated to showing us why the spirit world and human world should stay separate. Once again, no solution is offered for the dark spirit issue because industrialization, even Oroku say, was a huge reason for why they corrupted. At least having the tribes learn their spirituality would help that problem. But yeah, I don't want to talk about book 2 anymore. This video is getting long as hell already.
Dark, brooding, important, groundbreaking.
Book 3, in comparison with the other books of The Legend of Korra, is about as uncontroversial as the original series, i.e., it's good. It first of all scraps the stupid love polygon thingy and offers more for their characters to do and waits for them to develop. The Red Lotus in particular is a fan favorite. We get cool new bending styles like lava bending, no arm bending, and a non-pacifist airbender that didn't get slaughtered off screen. Zahir, he's got the presence, the philosophy, and a total babe at his side. Unlike the previous 2, is completely honest about his ideals from the get-go. However, I just want to say that the Red Lotus's version of Anarchy is a total strawman that doesn't resemble the real thing in the slightest. Now, I'm no anarchist myself, but from what I see, it's not just leader bad. I mean, it is, but they have more plans beyond assassinating all authority. One of the most core facets of his anarchism is mutual aid, which the Red Lotus doesn't advocate for. It's all just chaos. Anarchism is all about community involvement and cooperation in the name of equality. They feel democracy isn't egalitarian enough. I mean, just how many dictatorships have been founded through so-called liberal democracies? It's not necessarily a bad thing that their ideology isn't realistic. It just leaves the story very black and white and not very nuanced in comparison to the Fire Nation, whose imperialist ideology was totally real. Speaking of nuance, Book 3 is really only as good as it is because of how standalone it is. Book 1 has none-bender oppression, and even at Mon's defeat, the questions and commentary for society still remain. Any results of the Civil War in Book 2 would have huge ramifications on tribe relations and politics going forward, but in Book 4, the Red Lotus is largely disconnected from the happenings of the world. They don't represent wider disillusionment, they're really just some nobodies who want to take out the Avatar. The low-key, I kind of agree that the Avatar needs to go. See why Asian Lay's finale doesn't work as for why I think that way. Given that Book 3 and 4 were renewed at the same time, my only rewrites would be to strengthen Books 4's conflict. I love a more of a deep dive into the politics of the Earth Kingdom. How do the Earth Kingdom citizens feel about the United Republic? How has its existence impacted the Earth Kingdom? The Earth Kingdom rightfully refers to as stolen land. Is resentment against the Republic common? What about the opinions on monarchy? Do people want to abolish it? Malcolm Balloon's grandma certainly doesn't think so. The only one who expresses such an opinion is Su Yin.
I mean, the idea of even having a queen is so outdated. Don't you agree, Korra?
I haven't really thought about it too much.
Well, you should start. The world is evolving and the Earth Queen can evolve with it. You step aside.
She's an autocrat. She can't hate absolutism or else she's a massive hypocrite. I mean, Su Yin's a spoiled, ignorant brat, so expecting anything intelligent to come from her mouth is like expecting politicians not to repeatedly lie. I would turn the Red Lotus into a real anarchist group that successfully stages a coup by assassinating the Earth Queen. However, this revolution fails and leads into the rise of fascism as we see in Book 4. This could be the opportunity for some real villains, you know. Animal Farm already has a story structure for them. I don't trust them not to fuck it up, so perhaps one good season is better than none at all.
Das war ein Befehl! Der Angriff Steiners war ein Befehl! Wer schickt Sie? Dass Sie es wagen, Sie meinen Befehl zu widersetzen!
Given that the United Republic's status as stolen land plays into Kuvira's motivation, it is at this point in time that I suggest you watch my video on The Promise as I go far more in depth on the pro-colonialist message and how nonsensical the solution would be. There are chapters in the description for ease of viewing. Like Book 3, Book 4 is regarded to be a good season. It continues in the far more interesting character arcs, although that PTSD plotline was a fat mess. The politics of this season aren't a nonsensical mess like Book 1, nor is it abandoned suddenly like Book 2. No, like the Red Lotus, Kuvira is a pretty consistent villain. It really is The Promise again where my politics conflict a lot with Bright and the other creators, neoliberals' politics, so I intend to describe their beliefs. I somehow failed to mention this in the previous video, but Udao and the other colonies that make up the Republic are meant to be Hong Kong or Taiwan, and the Indians meant to be Bright, and I suppose maybe Jean Yang's wet dream of Hong Kong being split from China, because nothing says neoliberalism like forcefully imposing your Western ignorance on other people. But remember, the conflict isn't even about the independence versus rejoining the Earth Kingdom, it's about Udao remaining a colony versus being returned to the Earth Kingdom. It's really unbalanced. The Fire Nation has got 3 seasons worth of heinous oppression, and the Earth Kingdom is simply asking them to leave. The comic whitewashes all of these crimes and silences the indigenous people, which almost perfectly represents this season's conflict. And so after the assassination of the Earth Queen, the Earth Kingdom is destabilized. So the United Republic asks Su Yin to stabilize it, and she declines.
The Earth Kingdom is in chaos. There's a vacuum of power, and I'm concerned about what will happen if someone doesn't take control of the situation.
And do you think I should be the one?
You're the perfect person to take charge. The world leaders trust you, and as a Beifong, you have credibility in the Earth Kingdom.
I'm honored that you thought of me, but I'm not interested in imposing my ideals on an entire nation. I'm afraid I can't help you.
Su Yin, I know this isn't my place, but I think you should do this. Zaofu has always been a beacon of modern progress, and now you can share that with everyone.
Now you hear the words Kuvira uses, bringing progress to the Earth Kingdom. The Zararis so badly want you to think that Kuvira united the country is like this, when it's really more like this. And these have never been independent territories, they're Earth Kingdom land. Just look at her scene with the governor of Yi. Is what Kuvira is saying wrong? Those people are starving and being raided and are on the verge of destruction. Them being part of the Earth Kingdom is an objectively good thing. I really think that intimidating stares and music is enough to try and convince you that Kuvira is evil. They also offhandedly mention that she puts her dissenters in camps and uses the citizens for cheap labor later on. This is what TV tropes calls a kick the dog moment, a scene there for the sole purpose of telling the audience that this is indeed the villain. In terms of why the towns wouldn't want to be returned to the Earth Kingdom, Kuvira could be seen as an agent of the United Republic's continued imperialism. I mentioned last time that the United Republic would essentially put the means of production of the Fire Nation elite both inside and outside Republic City. Imagine having your most resource-rich land split off from you after the end of a super expensive 100-year war. Someone could even write a book about this. The Earth Kingdom had its issues, but the continued post-colonial trauma certainly must have contributed to the Earth Kingdom's collapse. It's only offhandedly mentioned in 2022 that the Fire Nation actually paid reparations, but it's too little too late in my opinion. Kuvira is seen as imperial for uniting the Earth Kingdom, while Raiko can openly talk about using Wu as a puppet leader, most likely for the Earth Kingdom's resources, and no one bats an eyelash.
You sure that's the guy you want running the Earth Kingdom?
Trust me, we'll be sending a delegation of experienced advisors to handle day-to-day governing.
They also make Kuvira kick out non-Earthbender citizens from the Earth Kingdom while seemingly brushing over the xenophobia that built the United Republic and would still persist today. Is it really such an insult that Kuvira becomes a much beloved dictator if there's an even worse one who's taken an enemy say up the ass? Once again, Bright has chosen the black and white route for complex and nuanced topics. Lastly, Kuvira's attempts to annex the United Republic, as I explained thoroughly, and never should have been independent in the first place. That much is objective. It was done only to appease extremely racist upper-class Fire Nation settlers. No one else. Actually, a lot of fans are straight up confused by the United Republic if it was even meant to be a fifth nation. Honestly, it operates more like an international zone where most people have stronger ties to their home country of which they have citizenship. I mean, the general of their army is heir to the Fire Nation throne, and before the end of Book 1, most of their leaders came from other countries. Rejoining the Earth Kingdom would be just fine, and they would maintain their autonomy anyways. Because as we see in the original cartoon, that's kind of how the Earth Kingdom operates anyways. So the season closes out with Wu deciding to continue the Republic's imperialism by bringing democracy to the Middle East, bringing democracy to the Earth Kingdom, because Bright is still all consumed by American propaganda that they don't understand that you can't bring democracy by force. Next time we read the comics where they try to pretend that one of Kuvira's generals won't win a landslide election and has to resort to brainwashing. If you find my style jumbled and schmucked up, then this section is for you. The Legend of Korra operates off of two concepts. Liberal democracy is the best form of governance, and every nation in the world will naturally move towards liberal democracy. Given that this is a leftist channel, I do not agree with that. But like in universe, it's such a new concept. Most of the Avatarverse are dictatorships. It hasn't even had the chance to find itself as better. The first democratically elected leader was a corrupt buffoon. What kind of message does that send? There's this thing known as real life where it explains why absolutism was rejected. But Legend of Korra ignores that in favor of Gundam battles, which is just not as compelling. For a series so pro-democracy as structure for the people, the show is shockingly anti-people. Some of the best parts of the original were spending time at places where we could see the effects of war had on everyone, even negative aspects of the so-called enemy. What eloquently needs is nuance. Nuance is not a middle ground. It looks at something from every side. Why is the show not interested in exploring the non-bender oppression, or the Civil War and the post-war effects of the two water tribes, or even the Earth Kingdom? Or the Civil War and the post-war effects on the two water tribes, or even the Earth Kingdom? Why is it that Kuvira gets hit with a designated villain stick, while the United Republic can do whatever the hell they want? Every time they introduce something more complex, they just scrub it away for black and white morality. Black and white morality isn't necessarily bad. The Last Airbender was this exactly because imperialism is evil, Bryke. But it was nuanced stories and people which gave it its heart. And your main character is supposed to be learning compassion and empathy, well, that leaves her an effigy of a much better show, such as the cry of the neoliberal. The fans can cope all they want. The Legend of Korra is not complex. It will never be complex. What's complex about it? They went too far, says every moderate in regards to the new human rights campaign. Although once they're successful, the moderate pretends to have accepted it all along. Maybe I should do that video on why a villain with a point is not a good trope. But hey, at least the leaks from the new show leave us with one positive. This entire operation gets blown up. Sometimes starting over from scratch is for the better. That's it. Bye.